The envelope was thick, a creamy shade, embossed with raised lettering that read, Carter and Stone, Attorneys at Law. Beneath it, in neat black ink, sat my name, Miss Lexi Harper, written in a script far too refined for anything casual. I held it in my hands a moment before breaking the seal, already knowing exactly what it contained. Not because anyone had told me, but because the day Grandpa passed, something inside me shifted. Like an old hinge finally giving way. At breakfast, my mother had announced it in her usual clipped tone. William's will is being read next week. It's formal, but don't get your hopes up. Emma's the main beneficiary. No need to dress up for disappointment. I hadn't argued. I learned long ago that disagreeing with her was like shouting into a well. Your words go in, but they never come back. The letter confirmed her words. There would be a reading, and attendance was requested. My eyes lingered on one line. You have been named among the interested parties. I traced the date and time with my finger, then set the letter beside my coffee. The steam curled up between the lines. In my mind, I could hear my father's voice. Don't make a fool of yourself showing up for something you were never part of. They never tried to be cruel. Not directly, but sometimes the lack of belief hurts worse than any insult. I wasn't the golden one. I wasn't Emma. I never had been. And yet, I thought of Grandpa's porch, the day he placed an old book in my lap and said, The ones who sit with you in silence, those are the ones who stay. This wasn't about inheritance. Not really. I didn't expect money, recognition, or even acknowledgement. But I folded the letter neatly, slipped it into my coat pocket, and circled the date on my calendar. Maybe I wasn't meant to matter in that room, but I was going to be there anyway. Growing up, Emma's name filled every corner of our house, as though it was woven into the wallpaper. Emma won first chair in orchestra. Emma's teacher said she was gifted. Emma's audition was flawless. Our parents spoke of her as though everything she touched instantly turned valuable. I never hated her, not really. I just learned how to exist in the spaces her spotlight didn't reach. While she stood on stages and posed for photographs, I disappeared into quiet corners, the back steps with a book, the garage with Grandpa's puzzle boxes. Once, my mother caught me reading at dinner and said, Why don't you try joining the world for once? I tried, but it never stuck. I wasn't loud enough, not dazzling enough, not Emma enough. Grandpa never asked me to be louder. Instead, he'd hand me little treasures, an old pocket compass, a cracked globe, a map of trails he'd never walked. See where this takes you, he'd tell me. I'd spend afternoons tracing paths across places I'd never been, feeling like he understood the way my mind wandered. He never said I was special. He didn't need to. The last time I saw him was a crisp Sunday in early autumn. I'd brought him a tin of tea from a small downtown shop, bergamot and dried orange peel. He brewed 2 mugs without asking what I wanted. We sat on his porch, leaves scattering across the yard, and simply existed together in that easy silence you don't have to fix. No one knew about that visit. No photos. No announcements. He didn't speak of the will. He didn't tell me anything. But when I left, he squeezed my hand and said, You always show up without needing to be seen. That's rarer than you think. It stayed with me. Not because it was praise, but because it felt like permission. Permission to keep showing up as I was, even if nobody noticed. Now, as I laid a plain black dress across my bed and tucked a coat with missing buttons into my bag, I didn't feel prepared. I didn't feel important. I didn't feel like anyone's heir. But something deeper pressed on me. Not entitlement, just the quiet conviction that I needed to be there. Not for them. Not even for me. For him. The chapel stood on a small hill, its stone walls chilled with early frost. I arrived just before the service began, wrapped in a wool coat that still smelled faintly of cedar from the closet. The wind stung my hands as I stepped inside and shook the cold from my sleeves. Emma was already there, draped in sleek black silk, heels far too high for winter. People swirled around her as if she were the widow instead of the granddaughter. She didn't notice me, or pretended not to. I'm here for William Harper, I told the usher. He hesitated a second too long before pointing me down a side aisle. You can sit there. The pews were filled with familiar faces. Neighbors, old family friends, people from the firm. My parents sat in the second row, Emma between them, leaning in as my mother whispered into her ear. I chose a seat near the back, alone. Behind me, someone whispered, "Why is she even here?" Another answered, "Didn't she cut ties years ago?" I didn't turn around. I let the murmurs pass over me like wind through trees, sharp, but nothing new. At the front sat the urn, small and dark. Nothing like the man I remembered. Beside it, a photograph of Grandpa, smiling in his work gloves in front of the cabin. They played a hymn I didn't know. The pastor spoke of faith and legacies. I kept my eyes on that photo, thinking of that quiet porch afternoon. The one no one else had seen, the one that needed no explanation. Grief is strange. Emma moved like she owned the place, her coat over one arm, a clutch swinging from her wrist. "This is just formality," she said, loud enough for me to hear. Grandpa already knew who deserved what. My parents settled beside her. My mother wore her courtroom face, half pride, half performance. I didn't sit near them. I chose the chair by the window, away from their cluster. Mr. Carter entered carrying a file beneath his arm. He nodded politely before sitting down. "Thank you all for coming. I'll begin the official reading of William Harper's will." Emma crossed her legs, chin tilted, as though she already knew what was coming. "To my granddaughter, Emma Harper," Mr. Carter read aloud. "I leave the Aspen Chalet, with all its furnishings and the sum of $300,000 to be distributed within 60 days of probate." Emma's smile spread, not with surprise, but satisfaction. She glanced at my parents, who each gave her the approving nod reserved for expectations fulfilled. Mr. Carter turned the page. The room shifted subtly, as if it had inhaled and held its breath. Emma glanced my way, the corners of her mouth curling in a faint smirk. My mother never looked at me. It felt final, like my name wouldn't be spoken. I had only been invited as a matter of courtesy, nothing more. I folded my hands in my lap and waited. Then Mr. Carter cleared his throat. "To Lexi Harper." The words fell into the silence like dust, soft but undeniable. My pulse jumped. I didn't move. Mr. Carter adjusted his glasses and continued, steady as ever. "To my granddaughter, Lexi Harper, I leave controlling interest in Harper Development, along with $53.5 million in personal and investment assets." The words hovered in the air, waiting for someone to accept them as real. The room went still. Emma blinked. Once. Twice. "What?" she whispered as if she'd misheard. My mother choked back a sound. My father leaned back like a weight had slammed into him. No one looked at me. Mr. Carter went on unfazed. "This includes 62% ownership of all corporate entities, voting authority on the board of directors, and full discretion regarding future leadership and allocation of assets." Emma shot to her feet, her chair scraping loudly against the wood. "There must be a mistake." "There's no mistake," Mr. Carter replied calmly. "Your grandfather made these revisions in person, witnessed and notarized. He was of sound mind." I still hadn't moved. My hand stayed folded, my heart hammering like it was trying to escape my chest. "He never said a word," Emma snapped. "He never even liked her. He barely mentioned her." Mr. Carter closed the file carefully. He left one last note for the family. He looked down and read a single sentence, no legal cadence, only quiet weight. She was the only one who showed up without needing to be seen. The silence settled again, heavier this time, thick with an unexpected truth. Emma's face showed only shock, no anger yet, just disbelief. My mother's lips parted slightly, her expression caught between denial and insult. My father studied me, really saw me, maybe for the first time in years. His eyes didn't soften, but they held steady. I wasn't thinking about the money, the business, or even the power. My mind went back to Grandpa's porch, that old book, and how he never rushed me when I sat quietly beside him. I thought about that one Sunday I'd never told anyone about, because I didn't need to. Emma finally broke the silence. "This isn't fair." I looked at her calmly. It wasn't meant to be. Mr. Carter gathered the papers in front of him. "There is one more item William asked me to deliver. A personal letter. It's for you, Lexi." He handed me a sealed envelope. The handwriting was instantly familiar. I slipped it into my coat pocket, not ready to open it yet, but I knew I eventually would. That night, alone in a cheap motel where the heater rattled and the curtains wouldn't close all the way, I sat on the bed with the envelope in my lap. I turned it over in my hands before finally breaking the seal. 3 folded pages rested inside. No dear, no greeting, just my name, then his words. Lexi, you never asked for anything, yet you gave me what no one else did. Time without conditions. I watched you grow up in the quiet corners of a house too loud to hear you. They measured love in applause. You measured it in presence. That Sunday you came with no speech, no performance. You just brought tea and sat with me. No one else knew, and you never told them. That told me everything. My breath caught. The air felt thinner, as though he were right there again, just watching, expecting nothing in return. I changed my will the next week, not out of spite. I loved Emma, too, in my own way. But she only stayed when the camera was on. She memorized my legacy, but never understood the time it took to build it. You once asked why I kept all those maps and journals. You didn't laugh when I said I liked knowing where things had been so I could guess where they might go. I don't care what you do with the company. Keep it, sell it, rename it. What I leave you isn't material. It's trust. Trust that someone who shows up quietly, without needing attention, is exactly the one who should hold the light when everyone else forgets where the switch is. They'll say you don't deserve it. But I've seen what the world remembers and what it forgets. I choose to remember you. Love, Grandpa. I folded the letter carefully, smoothing the crease with my hand before sliding it back into the envelope. It didn't feel like validation. It felt like recognition. Solid grounding. The next morning, I returned to the office for the final paperwork. Mr. Carter had asked me to come alone. But when I walked in, my parents and Emma were already seated, stiff like they were posing for a picture no one wanted taken. Emma stood the moment she saw me. You manipulated him, she said, sharp and rehearsed. He was old. He didn't know what he was doing. I didn't rush to respond. I just looked at her, makeup flawless, blouse pressed, grief polished into outrage. I never had to prove anything. I just loved him. Her face twisted. Don't you dare make this about love. He was my grandfather, too. I nodded. Then you must have known he hated cameras. My mother flinched. My father stared at the ground. Mr. Carter stepped forward, voice steady. Mr. Harper underwent 2 separate mental evaluations before updating his will. Both confirmed he was of sound mind. His instructions were deliberate. That doesn't make it right, Emma snapped. No, I said quietly. It means it was his choice. My mother broke then, soft tears, not loud, but steady. My father touched her shoulder, though she didn't reach back. Emma gathered her bag with clipped movements. This isn't over, she said, but her voice had lost its strength. You don't get to rewrite the family just because he's gone. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Her heels echoed down the hallway as she left. Mr. Carter gave me a small nod, gesturing toward the office. Just a few signatures. The envelope was still pressed against my chest. I hadn't let go since the night before. Later, I drove nearly 2 hours to Grandpa's cabin. Snow flurried along the roadside, light but insistent, whispering of winter. It had been over 10 years, but the turns came back like muscle memory. The leaning mailbox, the tall pines, the crunch of gravel as I pulled in. The key slid into the lock without resistance. Inside, nothing had changed. The pine table, the faded chair with its warm blanket, the crooked row of books. Dust lingered, but it felt untouched, preserved. On the mantel sat a single photo. Me at 10, sitting cross-legged on the porch steps with Grandpa's hand on my shoulder as we both looked at the same book. I hadn't known the picture even existed. Beside it was a small leather journal. I picked it up, opened to the first page. His handwriting leaned, slightly, deliberate. Lexi was never loud. That's how I knew I could trust her. The breath I'd been holding for years finally escaped. I sank into the armchair, letting the silence fill the room. Not heavy, but whole. After a while, I added wood to the fireplace and struck a match. The flame spread slowly, steady. I sat there for a long time, until the fire glowed across the floor. For the first time in longer than I could measure, I didn't feel the need to explain myself. In that cabin, warmed by the fire and surrounded by everything he left behind, I realized his gift wasn't wealth or power. It was the lesson of quiet strength. He showed me that presence, not performance, builds bonds that last. All those years I thought my silence made me invisible, but to him, it was my loudest truth. He valued the moments I showed up without expectation, the tea shared in private, the time given without agenda. His choice reminded me, the world often rewards noise, but it's the steady hands that hold it together. The company, the money, the cabin, they're only tools. The real inheritance is this truth. Showing up when no one is watching, carrying the light for those who've lost the switch. Grandpa's letter didn't just change my future. It reminded me that my worth was always there, waiting to be seen. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more.